Hi everyone, there is something undeniably captivating about a rare woman. Not because she is louder, flashier, or more visible, but because she moves differently. Her presence feels grounded, rooted in something internal rather than borrowed from external approval. She does not chase validation, she does not bend herself to fit into someone else's comfort, and she does not mistake attention for worth. Instead, she operates from a deep, unwavering understanding of who she is and what she stands for. These women are not rare because they are born extraordinary. They are rare because they make choices most people avoid. They choose self-respect over temporary affection. They choose growth over comfort. They choose purpose over popularity. And most importantly, they choose alignment with their values over the quick relief of fitting in. A rare woman is not defined by how many people notice her, but by how many people feel the weight of her absence when she leaves. She does not compete, she inspires. She does not demand loyalty. She earns it by being consistent in a world full of contradictions. And she does not seek to be chosen, she becomes the one who chooses the direction of her life. This journey is not about perfection. It is about becoming intentional. It is about rising after betrayal, building after loss, speaking when necessary, and walking away when dignity is at risk. This speech is not just a celebration of rare women. It is a call to become one. She does not choose self-respect because it is easy. She chooses it because it is foundational. Attention is fleeting. It fills the moment, not the soul. It gives noise, not fulfillment. When a woman decides that her worth cannot be measured by how many people look at her, but rather by how deeply she can look at herself without flinching, she steps into a kind of quiet strength that very few ever reach. And this decision becomes even more powerful when it is made in the presence of loneliness, when the temptation to settle is louder than the call to stay true. Loneliness has a way of whispering lies. It tells her that being seen is more important than being respected. It tells her that a warm body is better than a cold truth. It tries to convince her that temporary validation is enough to replace long-term self-worth. But the rare woman understands something essential: peace is better than company that costs her dignity. She knows that lowering her standards to avoid feeling alone only leads to a deeper kind of loneliness, the kind that comes from abandoning herself. So she chooses self-respect, even when it means eating dinner in silence, even when nights feel heavy, even when her phone stays quiet. She refuses to chase approval or beg for attention. Instead, she invests in being someone she is proud of. She builds her character while others chase applause. She commits to her growth while others settle for comfort. She holds her own hand through the silence rather than allowing someone unworthy to hold it for her. This choice transforms her. Every time she says no to an insult disguised as affection, she strengthens her backbone. Every time she walks away from someone who treats her as an option, she deepens her belief that she is a priority in her own life. Every time she chooses solitude over disrespect, she teaches herself that her heart is not desperate, it is discerning. And as time passes, her solitude becomes sacred, not suffocating. Her stillness becomes strength, not weakness. She begins attracting people who value her for who she truly is, not for how easily she can be controlled. Because when a woman owns her worth, she naturally commands respect without ever having to raise her voice or compromise her identity. Choosing self-respect over attention is not just a decision, it is a declaration. It says, I would rather walk alone in truth than be surrounded in dishonor. And in that declaration, she does not lose anything that was truly meant for her. Instead, she creates space for something far greater, genuine connection rooted in mutual honor, not superficial significance driven by momentary ego. She does not need to shout to be heard. She does not need to chase applause to feel valuable. Her silence is not empty, it is intentional, grounded, and full of meaning. In a world where so many people seek validation by being the loudest in the room, she stands still, observing, thinking, choosing her words with care. She understands that true confidence is not proven through noise, but through the calm assurance that she knows who she is and what she stands for. Her silence speaks of discipline. It shows that she does not react impulsively to every slight, every misunderstanding, every opinion thrown at her. She does not engage in chaos just to prove her relevance. Instead, she lets her actions communicate her values. While others shout, she builds. While others demand recognition, she earns it quietly through consistency and integrity. Her silence also reflects emotional intelligence. She listens more than she speaks because she recognizes that understanding others gives her clarity and strength. She has learned that reacting quickly often leads to regret, while staying silent long enough to process leads to wisdom. Her silence is not avoidance, it is strategy. It gives her time to evaluate, to align her emotions with her values, to respond rather than react. And there is power in being unbothered by the need for external approval. When others argue for attention, she remains grounded in her purpose. When people expect her to explain herself, she lets outcomes speak on her behalf. She knows that loud approval-seeking voices often reveal insecurity, while quiet confidence reveals certainty. By not begging to be seen, she becomes unforgettable. But her silence is not weakness. If anything, it is a mirror that reflects the noise of others back at them. It exposes immaturity, desperation, and inconsistency in those who cannot stand still within themselves. Those who try to provoke her eventually realize they are fighting with someone who refuses to be dragged into lower battles. Her silence disarms conflict, confuses negativity, and maintains dignity. There are moments when her silence makes people lean in rather than turn away. They wonder what she thinks, not because she is withholding, but because she has proven that when she does speak, her words carry weight. She speaks only when her voice adds value, not when it adds volume. And in that choice, her voice becomes powerful, rare, respected. Her silence is the space where she protects her energy, guards her peace, and strengthens her presence. It is where she recharges, reflects, and rises stronger. In her silence, she leads herself. And when she shows up, she leads others, not by overpowering them, but by inspiring them through calm strength. She does not need noise to prove her worth. Her silence already tells the world she knows it. She does not waste time waiting for validation from those who hurt her. Instead of begging for approval or clinging to sympathy, she takes her pain and turns it into fuel. When something breaks her, she does not stay shattered. She studies the pieces, understands what went wrong, and uses them to build something better. She knows that life will not stop being difficult just because she is kind, loving, or deserving. So instead of asking why something happened to her, she asks what she will do with it now. She does not transform her story into a lifelong excuse. She refuses to let betrayal become her identity or heartbreak become her permanent home. She understands that setbacks are not signals to stop, they are invitations to grow. Every disappointment becomes a lesson. Every fall becomes a foundation. Instead of telling people how much she suffered, she focuses on showing how much she evolved. While others may use pain to justify bitterness, she uses it to clarify her purpose. Where some choose to remain angry, she chooses direction. She does not deny what she went through. She simply refuses to be defined by it. She knows that staying in a victim mindset may gather attention for a moment, but building something meaningful earns respect for a lifetime. She believes that true strength is not shown through loud resilience quotes, but through quiet action. She does not beg for someone to see her worth. She puts in the work and lets her transformation do the talking. She wakes up every day with a choice to dwell on what hurt her or rise using what hurt her as a stepping stone. And every day, she chooses to rise. She builds new habits, new dreams, new standards. She invests in her growth instead of investing in old stories. She chooses healing not because it is easy, but because settling for pain would cost too much of her future. She understands that purpose is forged in difficulty. She accepts that rebuilding might be slow, sometimes lonely, but always worth it. She lives with a mindset that says, I will not chase people who broke me. I will chase the person I am becoming. She trusts that turning her pain into purpose attracts the right people, the right opportunities, and the right life. She works not to prove something to others, but to align with who she knows she was always capable of being. She does not tell her story to stay wounded. She tells it to remind herself how far she has come and how much further she can go. She is not perfect, and she does not pretend to be. But every day she builds something stronger inside her: resilience, clarity, self-respect, discipline. She has learned that begging keeps her stuck in the past, while building carries her into the future. Pain will always exist, but so will the power to turn it into something greater. And she chooses greatness, not excuses. She does not wait for someone else to decide how valuable she is. She knows her worth is not something others are allowed to negotiate, reduce, or distort for their convenience. She understands that when someone tries to make her feel like she must shrink herself to keep their approval, that is not love or respect, it is control. And rather than bending herself into smaller versions to be accepted, she chooses to walk away with her dignity intact. She realizes that trying to fit into someone else's limited perception of her is a slow form of self-betrayal. Every time she makes herself quieter to avoid conflict or dims her light to make someone else feel comfortable, she loses a little more of who she truly is. That awareness becomes the turning point. She begins to understand that walking away is not a sign of failure or weakness. It is a declaration that she will no longer compromise her value just to belong in places that were never worthy of her presence. She does not chase acceptance from people who treat her like an option. Instead, she stands firm in the belief that the right people will never make her feel like she must earn her place through self-erasure. She commits to surrounding herself with those who respect her boundaries, honor her voice, and recognize her strength without fear or insecurity. In doing so, she builds a life where she is not surviving on crumbs of validation, but thriving on the fullness of self-respect. She walks away not because she lacks love, but because she refuses to love herself less just to make someone else stay. She understands that leaving situations that require her to compromise her identity is a powerful act of self-preservation. In that act, she reclaims her sense of agency. She chooses peace over chaos, alignment over approval, authenticity over attachment. She becomes an example to herself and others that strength is not just about endurance, but about discernment. It is knowing when something no longer serves her growth and having the courage to release it. It is choosing to grow even when it means standing alone for a while. It is holding her head high and trusting that walking away from what diminishes her makes room for what will expand her. She does not apologize for expecting respect. She does not explain why she is no longer available to people who took her presence for granted. She moves forward with conviction, understanding that those who cannot handle her at full power were never meant to walk with her into her future. She lives in alignment with a powerful truth. She is not here to be less so that someone else can feel more. She is here to evolve unapologetically, to take up space with confidence, and to be fully herself without hesitation. And every step she takes away from what tried to diminish her leads her closer to a life built on authenticity, strength, and unshakable self-worth. She reaches a moment in her life when she understands that waiting to be chosen is an exhausting game built on uncertainty and fear. She realizes that every time she waits for someone else to validate her worth, she gives away a part of her power, so she shifts her mindset. Instead of wondering if she is good enough for someone's approval, she begins asking if that person aligns with the values, peace, and purpose she holds within. This shift does not happen overnight, but once it begins, something extraordinary awakens in her. She stops chasing and starts attracting. She no longer measures her value by who stays or who leaves. She no longer begs for attention or anxiously tries to prove she deserves to be seen. She discovers that confidence is not about being loud or flashy. It is about being rooted in clarity about who she is and what she stands for. When she embraces her identity without fear of judgment, she begins to radiate a quiet strength that cannot be ignored. People feel her presence not because she demands attention, but because she carries authenticity like a natural light. She makes decisions based on what aligns with her purpose, not what pleases others. She invests in her growth, surrounds herself with people who add depth, and lets go of those who only drain energy. She sets boundaries not as walls, but as gates, allowing in what nurtures her and keeping out what diminishes her. And with each boundary she stands by, she sends herself a powerful message: I matter. In this journey of choosing herself, she begins to glow differently. Her energy becomes calmer, more grounded, more intentional. She speaks with conviction because her voice now stems from truth rather than fear. She walks with certainty not because she has all the answers, but because she trusts herself to grow through every challenge. She does not seek permission to shine. She becomes a light because she understands that dimming herself to be acceptable is no longer an option. Her radiance is not loud or superficial. It is magnetic. It comes from healing her insecurities, embracing her imperfections, and standing firm in self-respect. It is the radiance of someone who is not desperate for attention, but deeply connected to purpose. When she steps into this version of herself, she stops hoping to be chosen by fleeting people and starts choosing a life aligned with her strength, vision, and peace. She radiates from within because she finally understands being chosen by others means nothing if she hasn't first chosen herself. And so the rare woman does not emerge by accident. She is forged through choices. Choices to rise instead of crumble, to grow instead of settle, to value herself even when the world tries to make her question her worth. She becomes rare not because life was easy, but because she refused to let difficulty define her identity. Her strength is not loud, it is steady. Her confidence is not aggressive, it is grounded. Her radiance is not about being admired. It's about being aligned with who she truly is. When she stops trying to fit into spaces that were never built for her soul, she begins to create her own. When she stops begging to be loved, love finds her in its truest form. When she stops chasing validation, she begins to walk with quiet certainty. And when she finally chooses herself, she becomes a force that shifts rooms, inspires hearts, and leads by example. If you desire to be this kind of woman, the path is not about perfection, it's about intention. Start choosing yourself every day, even in small ways. Because the moment you do, your light won't just be seen, it will be felt.